right. Now, this big Supreme Court ruling has a lot to do with immigration and the lovely delight that so many of the MAGA people were feeling when they saw this story, perhaps from USA Today or perhaps from another. Here it is. Supreme Court allows Trump to end deportation protection for migrants. Yep. So the Supreme Court ruled June 25th that President Trump can immediately end deportation protections for Haitians and Syrians, giving the administration a freer hand to curtail a humanitarian program that has allowed hundreds of thousands of immigrants from dangerous countries to temporarily live and work in the United States. Now, how they describe a country as dangerous, I don't know what the actual metric is for that, but I guess it's all relative, I guess. But again, why the Supreme Court rules on this, but somehow doesn't bother to note that the word immigration isn't in the U.S. Constitution, I don't know. I don't understand. Can anybody answer that for me? Because there's no answer to it that I've come up with. Let me give you a little more. Getting rid of the program is a significant part of Trump's hardline approach to immigration, which also includes his attempt to limit birthright citizenship. The court is still weighing that case. The case was also a test of Trump's executive power and the deference the court traditionally gives presidents on immigration and foreign policy questions. Now, remember, a lot of these people who came over with the temporary protection status, Joe Biden offered that to them. They came over under those auspices. Trump is trying to deport those people. So in other words, they came over thinking they were doing something that was allowed. And now the government is changing the rules. Now, you can't say that that is technically ex post facto law because it's only being done through executive action. So it's doubly insulting. And then it's triply insulting because the executive action is coming on the immigration front, which has nothing to do with the U.S. government. It's up to the states. So, though not technically a final ruling, the 6-3 decision lets the administration move forward with lifting deportation protections as they're being challenged. Writing for the court's three liberals, Justice Elena Kagan said she dissented from the majority's ruling that the immigrants may, quote, be put on the next plane. Viles Dorsvaniel, a Haitian who had been benefiting from the program and a leader of the Haitian Support Center, called the decision shocking news. Quote, this decision places thousands of Haitian families in immediate fear, he said. Haiti is not safe, and everyone knows it. After the decision, White House advisor Stephen Miller said Haiti is a, quote, absolutely safe country for Haitians. This guy's amazing. I guess your town is safe for your town. You better not leave. It'd be crazy for us to say that Haitians couldn't live in Haiti, he said. It's their country. Stunning. It would be crazy to say that Haitians can't live in their country. Okay, if you say so. So here's a little bit more. Lawyers representing about 350,000 migrants from Haiti and 6,000 from Syria sued to stop the terminations, saying the administration reached predetermined conclusions about whether migrants could return safely to Syria and Haiti. But the administration argued that the law creating the temporary status protection program bars judicial review of any determination about whether migrants may live and work in the United States. How about judicial review of whether or not you can send them someplace and you can arrest them? That might be a good idea right there. In other words, the Supreme Court will invent it just like they invented it back in the Qilong decision. They'll say, absolutely, the Trump administration can ship you back. Really? A due process? Nah. They were here under temporary protected status. Yeah, they were brought in and Biden said it was okay. That's right. So we can be shipped back now. Yes, you can. Have we done any harm? Well, you broke the statutes. Isn't that just interpretation of the statute? It was Biden who let us in. And at that time, that was fine. Well, yeah, it is interpretation of the statutes, but we're going to let them do it anyway. We're the majority of the Supreme Court, and Elena Kagan was in the minority. Isn't that great? And MAGA hates her anyway, so there you go. Now, let me give you this one. This is another story. This ICE action sets a very dangerous precedent. Check it out. ICE is fining an immigration attorney for what they call an alleged false asylum claim. Yeah, this is a first. Immigration and Customs Enforcement on Tuesday announced it is seeking to fine an immigration attorney, who allegedly filed false asylum claims. The first time the agency has filed such a claim themselves. So in other words, if they determine that this person who is filing for asylum with a lawyer shouldn't be filing for asylum, that's fraud. That's what they're doing. Check this out. Homeland Security Investigations, the investigative arm of the Department of Homeland Security, and you get to pay their salary too, announced 5 notices of intent to fine attorney Vinod Dottamani, whom they say filed 32 immigration cases in which he filed 64 fraudulent documents. Dottamani faces a $250,000 fine for what DHS says is a pattern of filing allegedly false asylum claims. He allegedly filed the, quote, identical or nearly identical in language and substance, containing the same or nearly the same factual narrative and supporting details regarding the alleged persecution. Well, how can they know it unless they actually have a court case to find out whether these people should fall under that category? Maybe they're all from the same town. Maybe they all have similar problems. And does it even matter? If somebody wants to move someplace, if I want to move someplace, can a gang of mafia thugs tell me, no, you can't because you're not giving us the right story? The action against Dottamani comes after DHS's top lawyer last month directed ICE to go after lawyers who filed what they call fraudulent asylum claims in immigration court. DHS has never sought to punish lawyers who have allegedly filed fraudulent claims before. Quote, immigration attorneys say some courts are holding over 100 case hearings daily. Filing a false immigration claim violates anti-fraud statutes, according to DHS General Counsel James Percival, and those who file them should be held accountable. But here's the thing. They haven't determined that they're fraudulent. They're claiming they're fraudulent, and now they're fining the lawyers. They're just fining them. They haven't actually had any hearings on whether these are fraudulent or not. It's just ridiculous. In other words, they're just taking this action. They're just going after these guys. And why are they doing that? They're doing it because they want to reduce the number of claims that are made in the courts, because there are so many claims. And they don't want to have to handle people on an individual basis. They want to shuffle them out in big groups and not give anybody any due process. So if somebody has a claim and then they'll tell the attorney, no, we think your claim is fraudulent and we're going to fine you, and then they take that person away, they're all set. And what's the lawyer going to do? Other lawyers are going to see that and say, well, I'm not going to get involved with that. I could face a $250,000 fine. I'll do something else for my day. Now, here's more, because this is amazing. The alligator Alcatraz is closing, and they're saying that it's done its job. But we know that it's closing because A, it was unsanitary, B, it was super expensive because they had to bring fresh water in every day, and C, they had an environmental lawsuit against them. They were going to close it months ago. Remember that? Well, look at this. This is what they now say. It's done its job. RT reports, the ICE detention center has fulfilled its role, says Ron DeSantis, in an immigration crackdown after 21,000 deportations. So evidently everything's done. I thought you were so starving for these places to house the migrants that you were buying empty warehouses, you MAGAites. You were going to buy a warehouse in Merrimack, New Hampshire that just happened to be owned by a friend of the governor's. You were going to buy these places all over the place. Now you're not going to do it. Is it because you don't need them anymore? I thought it was really necessary. You were going to shell out $600 million to go to the States if they would just open up these places. That's not going to happen now? I mean, $600 billion. This detention center of tents and trailers was built in a matter of days on a remote Everglades airstrip and opened in July last year. Nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz because of its isolated swamp-surrounded location, it was designed to hold thousands of ICE enforcement detainees awaiting removal. Well, speaking on Thursday, DeSantis said the center had, quote, check this out, fulfilled this mission, whatever that means. And of course, just like national security, when they're done with it, when they can't keep it going, they'll paint it the way they want to, and then they'll do something else. He stressed that it had always been intended as a temporary facility. Really? While more permanent detention capacity was developed. Is there more permanent detention capacity? Not in this report. Here is a little more, though. RT gets it covered. The closure comes after months of controversy over ICE raids that fueled nationwide protests. The White House has defended the deportation program, billed as the largest in U.S. history, as a way to remove the worst of the worst criminals. The Alligator Alcatraz facility was under the cloud of a lawsuit from environmental groups, an Indian tribe, by the way. And as I noted, they don't bring it up here. They weren't able to even keep water going into the place. Now, finally, I want to give you this one in the court news. 100-year sentence handed down in landmark ICE facility attack case. Now, I want to ask you your thoughts on this, because RT's got this, and there's one of these videos from like ABC or something as well. A 100-year sentence handed down in the landmark ICE facility attack case. And we didn't get to talk about this. This was buzzing on talk radio for MAGA's folks yesterday. I listened to some of it in the car yesterday. 8 defendants convicted over a 2025 terrorist attack. Remember this one in Texas? Well, they've received prison terms ranging from 30 years to a century. So you probably remember 8 people convicted over a 2025 so-called terrorist attack on a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention facility in Texas. They were handed prison terms of up to a century on Tuesday, the so-called leader of the gang. This guy, Benjamin Hanil Song. U.S. Justice Department said the case marked the first sentencing of defendants affiliated with Antifa since President Trump designated the movement a terrorist organization. The problem with Antifa is that it's so loose, people can call themselves Antifa and actually never go to their meetings, never actually be part of the group. It's very, very loose. According to the DOJ, and I'm not defending Antifa per se. You know, I know Antifa was started in Stalin's Soviet Union to try to infiltrate the German National Socialists to bring them over to the World Socialist movement. And it's just continued ever since. But there are some questions I want to present to you about this. According to the DOJ, the defendants were convicted of their roles in, quote, rioting, using weapons and explosives, providing material support to terrorists, and please keep every one of these in mind because I want to go to you, obstruction, and the attempted murder of an Alvarado police officer at the Prairie Land Detention Center on July 4th, 2025. It's some pretty heavy stuff. Benjamin Hanil Song, whom prosecutors identified as the cell's leader, and the gunman who shot and wounded the officer during the attack, was sentenced to 100 years in prison. The 7 other defendants received terms ranging from 30 to 70 years. Now, let me show you a little bit here, ask you some questions. As I noted, there's a great deal to consider here. On the surface, this might appear to be a case of Antifa gangsters attacking the people in so-called law enforcement who were trying to do their jobs. On a constitutional level, of course, the immigration policing factor is not part of the U.S. Constitution. So ICE itself is illegitimate, and the DHS role in doing any sort of border work is illegitimate. However, The governor of Texas during the Biden administration did ask the feds for help regarding migrants. So under Article 4, Section 4, the feds are supposed to respond. However, on a deeper level, the feds only get their cash through taxation, which is aggressive. And they're kidnapping people who aren't engaged in any violence against others by the whole, right? So let's say that's the setup. Would you, in your eyes, be justified to engage in your own violent acts to stop the thieves and kidnappers and cagers? Would you be justified to go up against agents of the state who already are engaging in aggression against you to get their money? Would you be justified? Let me turn to you just let me know yes, no, and some of your thoughts, and drop them in over at Rumble. And if you want to, you can put them up. We'll get them on the screen over at X as well. But here's, let's see. Okay, so let me know what you think. Yes, no, what you think. Oh, hey, Guards a Kid. Thank you, Will to Box. Appreciate that. And Angelo 1999. Well, Angelo, I see your comment there, but you know, if my family back in 1970 had, you know, one of its children got snatched up and thrown into one of the Indian boarding schools, yeah, you know, not cool, not cool. So Front Porch Media, ethically, possibly, but at a high risk of what did happen. Yes, yes, yes. That's exactly, you nailed it, Front Porch. That's exactly it. So ethically, you're 100% justified, right? 100% justified. And yep, Angelo's got an interesting point here. Angelo says, not only justified, but morally obligated to stop evil. Well, that's interesting. Now, here's another question. Is one morally obligated to stop evil being perpetrated against another person? That's tricky. I would let societal bubbles determine the range of that. Okay. Because that starts to get into, can I then apply my position on whether or not someone should step in to intervene? Should I be able to apply that in some way? The only way that I would be able to do that would be ostracism, right? I couldn't force somebody, but if someone did not provide that help or whatever, perhaps I would be inclined not to participate with that person, right? I can't force somebody. You've got to help that old lady who's going to get hit by the bus. I don't know. I'm afraid of buses. You did the wrong thing, right? All I can say is, you know what? You didn't help that old lady. I'm not going to deal with you. Right? It's because, you know, obviously there's a difference between me explicitly trying to tell somebody I'm going to coerce you and me saying I'm going to take actions unto myself and just not deal with you. But you're 100% right. Every person who was there, who was convicted of these crimes, was 100% justified to be there. And that man who shot the police officer, he actually was justified as well. And they were justified in trying to rescue the kidnapped people. They were justified also in trying to defend against those aggressors who were the recipients of stolen goods, because it's likely they would probably continue to receive stolen goods, so the perpetration of the crimes of taxation would continue. On an abstract ethical level, you guys are 100% right. Those guys are 100% right. Absolutely right. Whether or not you'd win in the public sphere or, of course, under a statute, you wouldn't, obviously, and these people didn't. But when it comes to, as I laid it out, when it comes to all these things, those people would be 100% justified. Let me show you some more of what I wrote up here. I said, this court news is sickening and so on and so forth. As I noted, on a constitutional level, the immigration policing factor is not part of the U.S. Constitution, so ICE is illegitimate. DHS working on this is illegitimate. Texas governor did ask them in, but in order to respond, they have to use government money. And by responding, they're kidnapping people. So what the governor is actually asking is for the vast majority of these people who aren't engaging in violent crimes, these migrants, they're just there. The governor is saying, I want to hire kidnappers to take them away. And I want the federal government to help. It might be constitutional, according to Article 4, Section 4, for him to say, yes, please come in here and help us do the kidnappings, but it's not ethical, right? And it's not ethical to force somebody to pay for the kidnappings or for the cagings, right? So now we plunk these people down, or, we're forced to pay for the plunking these people down in there. And I said the case centers on the July 4th, 2025 incident at the Prairie Land Detention Center, an ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas, near Dallas. A group of roughly 11 people, some dressed in black bloc attire, dark clothing with face coverings, gathered at night. They set off and threw fireworks and explosives at the facility, vandalized vehicles, and a guard kiosk, including graffiti like Ice Pig, broke a surveillance camera, and brought firearms, body armor, and medical kits equipped for treating gunshot wounds. Now, all those things, typically, even on the non-anarchist level, if people were to look strictly at the Constitution and say, well, maybe I might give these people a pass because they were just trying to rescue the people. If it didn't go any further and a police officer weren't shot, they'd be like, yeah, I think these people were justified. But they might start to feel uncomfortable with the police officer being shot, right? And this is not just really an academic exercise. This actually happened, right? And the policeman could have been killed. When local police responded after ICE officers called 911, shots were fired, to use the passive voice. Alvarado Police Lieutenant Thomas Gross was struck in the neck, not fatally. Benjamin Hanil Song, identified as the group's leader and a former Marine reservist, was convicted of firing the shots 11 rounds before the rifle jammed. Following a trial and presentation of evidence, signal chats with planning and reconnaissance and discussions. And some people thought this was like a lie hop or a false flag. Phone location data showed devices powered down or placed in Faraday bags, DNA fingerprint matches and surveillance video, recovered weapons, anarchist literature and flyers and zines such as Fight ICE Terror with Class War, and witness testimony. 8 defendants were convicted on charges, including 1, rioting with intent to commit violence, 2, using or carrying explosives, 3, providing material support to terrorists, 4, obstruction, 5, attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. Now, let me just go through a few of these. Rioting with intent to commit violence. Okay, so rioting, that is a subjective term that the government will apply to all sorts of things. Intent to commit violence. The government will determine what the intent is and what the violence level threshold is. The violence already occurred through taxation and the pointing of the government guns. So these people are responding to violence in every way. They're not initiating violence. That's very clear. The people who got convicted. Second, using or carrying explosives. There's no crime in that. And of course, if they're using explosives against a government authority, then is it really a criminal act of initiation of aggressive violence, or is it a response? It's a response. Providing material support to terrorists. Well, terrorists is a term that they Humpty Dumpty eyes. It means whatever they want it to mean. And material support also means whatever they want it to mean. I mean, literally, a verbal suggestion to somebody could be called material support, even though it's not material. They do. They call it that. Obstruction. Obstructing what? Trying to hide your plans. And then attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. That's the big one for Mr. Song. You got 100 years for that. Now, again, people are focusing on the sentence for this. That leaves the door open to the idea that Song should have been charged in the first place, and it overlooks the deeper conflict of whether or not there was an initiation of aggressive violence. And the initiation of the aggressive violence was the state pointing guns at people to pay for that police officer's salary, and then for the kidnapping and for the ICE facility in Texas. And as ugly as people might think that is, those are just the facts. Those are the ethical, flat, basic root terms. And those are the ones people have to deal with. And if people are uncomfortable dealing with those things, then perhaps they should feel uncomfortable dealing with the aggression of the state and whether or not people can resist aggression of the state. Because if a person can't resist that aggression by the state to say, give me your tax money or I will put you in jail and kill you, I'm going to use it for X, Y, or Z purpose. It shouldn't matter what the purpose is. The initial threat to make them pay should be sufficient. Whether it's handing out cupcakes or it's arresting people for some reason. Doesn't matter. It's the aggression. It's the violence. If someone is not justified in resisting that violence and trying to prevent future violence like those tax goons and the people receiving the tax money, if they're not justified in defending themselves, then how can somebody, say in Buchenwald, be justified in resisting a guard who wants to rape him or her? Or how can someone in Soviet Russia be justified in resisting Stalin taking away their shop? How can someone be justified in trying to stop the cattle cars from getting filled up, sabotaging some train that's going to be filled up to bring people to the gulag? How is it any different? It's not. There are aggressors, and there are the people who make society run. There are the productive people who don't prey on each other aggressively, and then there are the aggressors. And I heard Jeff Cooner today talking about how these Haitians, they're getting welfare that's they're getting welfare, they're welfare recipients, they're getting welfare that's designed for Americans. Again, this is a supposed conservative. Could somebody please call him and say, so are you telling me that it's acceptable to demand the fruits of somebody else's labor if you're an American and you've got enough people? How is that ethically responsible or at all acceptable? And where does that end? Is it just you don't like the end purpose for it? You want what you call national defense? You want this, you want that? You want to hand out welfare for this or that? Sorry. So as I noted, the group received a combined approximately 450 years. Several others pleaded guilty to material support charges. And the key points, many participants claimed they believed it was a peaceful protest. None of this matters. None of it matters. They could have gone into it thinking, yes, we are going to tear down the walls and punch everybody in the face, and we will kill any of those guards around the kidnap victims. It doesn't matter, because they weren't the ones initiating the aggression. They were responding to the initial aggression. So here's the final points. Critics of the prosecution, including the defense, highlighted several aspects as overly aggressive and disproportionate. 1, the rapid shift to terrorism-related charges. 2, the extremely long sentences. 3, the reliance of ideology or the black bloc outfits or the literature they had on hand rather than the so-called crimes. And the broader context of aggressive government tactics, intensified ICE enforcement, creating flashpoints, combined with heavy surveillance, and much more. So we'll see how that goes. But it was very interesting to get your feedback. And I'm going to go back. If anybody wants to add any more comments, just let me know. But, these are the types of things. There was a guy in New Hampshire, I mentioned him once last week, who was a radio host. And he ended up going like white nationalist. I can't remember the dude's name, but he would really, really push this idea of it's okay to kill a cop or shoot a cop or whatever, right? And this is the thing, as far as it goes on a personal ethical level, there is really no difference between the state threatening you subtly behind the scenes and coercing you to act in certain ways with the threat that they will act on you, and a mafioso doing the same thing. No difference. And you would be 100% justified in defending yourself against the mob. The question is how it would be seen, right? How it would be portrayed, and whether or not it would actually help people more clearly see the evils of the state, or it would just win more people over to the state. And I hate to say it that way, because there are human lives at stake, but so many of these people who get wrapped up in what they call law enforcement don't understand that there's a government gun in the room, and it's always in the government people's hands, and it's pointing at their neighbors. So Front Porch says 100-year sentence in U.S. federal prison is 80 plus actual years. Unless maybe they're friends with Donald Trump, right?